or record on the cloud.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Whatever. I could
Okay,
break it up into little bits and pieces, maybe, or whatever.
Better to have it in the bag than not.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I've got 2 links I want to put in the chat that for. But I have to get out of this, I think.
Should we start letting people in, Charlie? Or,
Yeah, okay.
Or you can, if you want, why don't you get your screen up so you're all set up with your Zoom, and then we'll
Yeah,
let people in.
I want to get these in the chat here.
Nice flowers. Hey, do you see what it says underneath my name? Mark Zone 5 construction toughest zone.
Construction, what does that say?
Can you see those 2
Construction's
links?
toughest
zone.
Yeah. You guys in Minneapolis, you dip up to freezing in the winter. Kansas City dips down to freezing in the winter, and we go through it. So I maintain we're in the toughest zone.
Oh, you can still see those my flower screen, huh?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why don't you get your PowerPoint up?
Yeah, I gotta find it here.
Speaking of climate zones, Mark, we're Ruben and I on our Structure Talk podcast are going to be interviewing a representative home inspector from each climate zone to discuss the kind of the building science issues and the things that they deal with. Yeah, so we're starting this week. Actually, we're going to be interviewing Dusty Jameson tomorrow.
Oh, sure. Yes, he's down there in the south.
Yep, Tennessee.
I hope he's going to be on here tonight.
Yeah, I think he wanted to be. Okay. Should we let people in?
I'm good. So you can, you can see the presentation. Whoops, let me get out of, that's the wrong screen here.
You can see what gets, okay, there we go. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Dylan, do you want to do it?
Sure. I'll let everyone in, Charlie.
Sounds good.
Oh, my son and Eamon, he's there.
Nice.
David, we got some good friends from our Sunday meetup.
Yeah. David Engelhart. Mr. Hester.
What's up?
Donnie.
Yeah.
Donnie, is your background picture the Columbia?
Where am I at here? Hold on, I'm messing with my computer. Oh, that's Sweden.
Oh, okay. Long way from the Columbia.
Yeah, close. it runs into water.
Yeah.
Goes around and gets there somewhere.
Well,
So,
welcome
Charlie,
everybody. I was just going to ask real quick, should we leave everybody unmuted so they can ask questions during it, or would you like people to put their questions in the chat and have people muted?
That's a good question. Let's just try the chat. I mean, it's a small number so far, but
yeah.
Let's some more coming in. So let's just keep it in the chat for now.
But I don't want to be muted.
There's Millen.
Come on, Donnie. We got to get through the presentation.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No chatter from the gallery.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Only a muted chatter, Donnie.
Okay.
Hey, David.
Don, it's been a while since we've seen you.
I know. I've been playing on Sundays, so it's and Saturdays. So I was gone for a couple weeks, and then I was up in the mountains, and
Christopher, hey man,
How you
Looks like-
guys doing today?
great to see you, man. Good.
It's going to be interesting to see who shows up because I broadcast this all over both my Facebook pages, and
Mm.
not a lot of people said they were going to come, but some told me privately they would and still aren't here. So I don't know. Glad to see my son Eamon there. Oh, there's my other son Liam.
Nice.
the Buell clan.
Yeah, really.
You should have everybody write in the chat where you're from too. That might be kind of fun to see
Yeah.
if you're able to. Put in the chat what city and state you live in.
Yeah. You can edit your name to have that.
Or just what climate zone.
There you
Yeah,
go.
or climate zone. Yeah. Well, we're going to have from all kinds of climate zones, and a lot of what I'm going to talk about today will be applicable to any climate zone, but some more applicable to cold climates.
Nice.
Well, how much longer?
I think we're kind of ready to go, Charlie. It's 5:04, and we can kind of let people in if they're dribbling in late.
Yep.
It's an evening thing, so I imagine some people will be coming and going.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks to Tessa. You can blame Tessa for this whole event. We got chatting one day and she said I ought to do something with all the information about the houses I used to build. And so here we are. So let's high performance, low cost construction in a cold climate and some other fun stuff. So what gets in the way of building better houses? I'd say a big thing is thinking it can't be done. It's really easy to fall into the trap that well, it's too expensive or takes special skills or whatever. And I from the get-go, I attempted to come from a place that I could build super insulated, energy efficient houses cheaper than conventional houses. And I was able to do that to a large degree, and I still don't understand why it wouldn't be possible today, but we'll talk about all of that. So I've been Don Quixote much of my life, always willing to tilt at some windmill. And thinking it's going to be more expensive. So let's look at it. This is something that I just took a picture of the other day. Eamon will recognize this. This is the city of Shoreline is going around and they're retrofitting all these crosswalks for wheelchair access. And the cost difference between doing this as a remodel as opposed to doing it brand new when all the other sidewalks is being done is huge. I mean, it's just an enormous expense to go back and do this later. So we have to keep in mind that a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is related to new construction. Payback, talk about payback for energy efficiency. The payback is often more attainable with older, poorly insulated houses than it is for brand new houses. And the reasons for that are once you super insulate and make a house really airtight and energy efficient, spending a lot of money on a active solar system to heat that house might not pencil out at all, because you've still got the expense of the array, but it doesn't take, you don't need it.
Mhm.
You just don't, especially for heating. But we'll look at that as well. Say something else about that. At any rate, we'll come back to that. All right, so people want to maintain a perceived standard of living and keep up with the Joneses. Yeah, so houses have to look like regular houses. People want things to look the same. But they want to be able to impress their neighbors with what they're doing, and all of this can be contrary to saving energy. I mean, and if you want a 6,000 square foot house, and you don't need, it's just two people living in it, is that can you really truly make that energy efficient, or are you just I don't know, stroking your ego or whatever? But we see these houses all the time. We think the Earth's resources are free or limitless. Well, I think we know that that's not true. I think it's an energy efficiency of a two-person, 6,000 square foot house is an oxymoron. I just don't think you can even talk about it. It's but we'll talk about that as well. This is an example I like to think of. If we can figure out a way to save $2,000 on our heating bills, only to justify spending more money on a bigger house until we get back up to spending that $2,000 again, what have we gained? Nothing. It's and that's apart from the additional costs of building that house as well. So that's what people strive for. I had many clients, or not many, I had a couple of clients in particular that if it didn't show, they didn't want to spend the money on it. They would rather spend money on something that, well, a good example was he had a $600. The choice was add insulation in the attic for $600 or buy a fancy programmable lock set for $600. He went for the lock set.
Yeah, they always take the bling.
Yeah, it's about the bling. People demand and expect cheap fuel. Yeah, we see that every day. You see with gasoline, everybody thinks that the price of gasoline is outrageous. I think it should be twice whatever it is now to reflect the true cost to the environment of driving around the country. I don't think that the $4 or $5 a gallon comes even close to what the environmental impact. And this is where I said, there's no way I'm going to stay away from the politics in this discussion. But
while everybody was waiting in the waiting room, we had a little discussion, and Charles warned us that he was going to get political. He couldn't not get political today, so that's why we have everybody muted.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I love it.
I get to talk. Nobody else gets to talk.
This is the Charles platform tonight. Charles, you get to say whatever the heck you want.
Get to be on my soapbox for a bit, but and don't believe what I'm saying. Just think about it and see if it
Well, it has a real impact on energy efficiency. I mean, the Europeans have a lot of more innovative stuff with building for efficiency than we do, and they act as though it's a moral virtue. But the truth is, their energy prices are like 3 times what ours are. And if our energy prices were the same as theirs, we'd do all these innovative things too. I mean, it's just the math doesn't pencil when it's really cheap energy.
Yeah. And adjusted for our dollar, almost all the European countries pay way more for gasoline than we do.
Yeah.
All right. It is government's and technology's job to ensure the above. Yeah, we all hear that with our own government. We want to keep things. It's our right in a way. So here's my first project. It's a ferrocement dome, and you can see it was an article from Mother Earth News. I forget the date. Well, it would have been around this time, 1972. And you can go online, search this ferrocement dome costs only $400, and you can find that article about this dome that my first wife and I built, and we lived in that one winter. And it was fun. It was a fun
What?
project.
You lived in that dome for a
Yeah.
winter, Charles?
Yeah.
And you
And
built it, Charlie?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Do you know what ferrocement is? It's a
No.
boat building technology. And we just applied it to building a little house with it.
well, I think it's actually an upside down boat that you built.
Yeah, it is exactly. And
Was this thing comfortable? I mean, I'm sure you had to heat it, but was it, comfortable during
it was
winter?
okay for the size, and we buried it in bales of hay
Huh.
for the winter.
And did you have wood heat? Is that a little chimney off the
With a little
backside?
wood stove in there, yeah.
Okay.
A little yodel wood stove.
Wow. I had no idea, Charlie. Okay, for anyone that's listening too, can you just give us a quick rundown of like what how this I mean, you were a builder for how many years? When did you start building? And how did your business evolve?
Yeah, well, this was the start of my building career,
Okay.
building these little weird structures for myself and being a hippie living in the back 40 and had long hair down to my butt,
Oh my gosh. Do we have a picture of that in the presentation?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. There is one later. I can't remember whether it has long hair or not. I was routinely cutting my hair to go visit my draft board. So that's another. Talk about politics. We'll stay away from that one.
Can I ask a question here real quick?
Yeah, sure, David.
Wasn't there a manufacturer of dome homes called Monterey Domes back in the day? Back in, I want to say in the 80s. I remember getting mail from Monterey Domes to try to sell me a dome home.
Yeah, probably geodesic. Might have been geodesic or I don't know.
They were pre-manufactured parts and pieces or whatnot that they would ship you to. I'm just wondering if it was inspired by that or something like that.
Well, it was requisite in the 70s that you were interested in domes. There was no way around.
Shortly after you read some Buckminster Fuller, you had to go out and build a dome house.
Yeah. I helped a buddy build a 32-foot
you torqued my interest on that one.
An egg-shaped geodesic dome, and the last pieces that came together, they balanced a ladder on nothing, and I went up and put the last connector in. So this is 40 years later. I took this picture from the road just driving by, and you can see the structure. It's now a chicken coop, which is probably more appropriate for its use. So moving on, now we're at the bigger dome I built, 1973. This was 24 feet across, and I can't remember, but a loft up here. My oldest daughter was actually born in this dome.
Wow.
And again, we insulated it with bales of hay.
So how did that work? The hay is like, is it right up against the roof then?
Yeah, it was. It was right on the roof. This whole thing got tarred.
Okay. So no ventilation. This is a hot roof system.
A hot roof system.
Yeah, real quick, run us through the assembly from like outside to inside, if you could, of what that dome is made of.
If you can imagine rebar going from this. There's a steel ring up here, and rebar goes down to the ground all the way around, and then around this way as well. So like a globe, the latitude and longitude of a globe, and then 7 to 10 layers of chicken wire sewn on both sides of that rebar, and they're sewn together with little like wire ties. So the whole thing was less than 2 inches thick. And then you force cement in from both sides, and these were little cones we bit with glass bottles in them to create little bits of light on the inside.
Little
With solar
skylights.
tubes.
Yeah, solar tube. That's awesome.
But this thing,
you had a stucco roof, Charlie.
I know. In the wintertime, we would have the entire inside of the dome would frost over some mornings.
Oh, wow. Wait, so you had so on the inside of the concrete, then you had bales of hay, and then did you have anything finishing the inside of that surface?
No, it was just handprints and trowel marks, and
so you had stucco on the inside too, right? I mean,
yeah, it was the same inside and out basically.
Okay.
As far as this interior was left a little bit more rustic with actual handprints here and there, just for decoration and to be artsy fartsy.
Yeah.
And you heated this with a wood stove?
Yeah, wood cook stove is what we used for heating this, and the kitchen sink was in here, and it had a hand pump that went down to a hand dug well here. You can see the tripod where we hadn't finished the well here yet. That's a 24-foot deep hand dug well. So
from a moisture control standpoint, it doesn't sound like this was entirely successful if you had frost on the interior.
Not for living in, because you produce so much moisture just living and breathing in this tight little structure. It was very airtight, as you can imagine. But
how come you didn't get a heat recovery ventilator, Charlie?
Yeah, well, I didn't even know about them then.
Yeah, I don't know if they existed in 1973.
I knew very little at this point. We were just adventurers. This property was 40 acres or 30 acres we bought here, and it was a quarter of a mile off the road. So you could drive in the summer, but in the winter, there's no way to drive in here.
So would you snowmobile in?
You could, yeah. I never had a snowmobile, but
yeah. And
snowshoes I had.
Was this slab on grade?
Yeah.
Interesting. How did that fare? Is this upstate New York?
Yeah, it was fine. Yeah.
Is it still standing today, Charles? Do you know?
It is. I heard that some kids got into it and burnt the face off and melted the vinyl windows out. I don't really know. I haven't been back to see it.
Wow. So wait, one more quick question. That whole structure was supported with rebar. You didn't have to do any framing at all? Just for that front face wall you framed it, but everything else was... You
literally, when it's all the rebar's in place and all the chicken wire's in place, you could jump up and down on it without any cement and not move it at all. It's just...
Wow. Okay.
Super sturdy that way. All right, let's that's all the last century. This is the first house I built for a client. This guy approached me and asked me if I wanted to build a house in his development here, and I said, well, what do you want me to build? And he showed me the plans, and he says, no, I'm not gonna build another dinosaur, because it was just a regular 2x4 house. And I said, by this time I'd doing a lot more reading and research, and I knew that my future was kind of set in terms of going down a road of energy efficient building and whatnot. But so this house was built, and in those days I cared a lot about the slope of the roof, because it could be that it be all ready for solar panels, mostly for hot water heating as opposed to photovoltaics at that point. Photovoltaics was coming in. It had a lot more resistance it has today. Let's see. That's from the other side of that house.
That's a really beautiful house, by the way.
It is.
Not
Yeah,
that
it's
the
cool.
other ones weren't, but
thanks,
you stepped it up a notch with your design there.
Well, the neighbor to the south of this house came over one day and thanked me for improving the value of his house. So that was
Oh, that's
kind
nice.
of a nice left-handed compliment.
So it seems like there is some intention both with the way the roof is sloping and the roof overhang and stuff.
That's right.
Is it the overhang side that we're looking at, like where the sliders are, is that facing south?
Yeah, this is facing south. The overhang is 4 feet because that's what in upstate New York is ideal for keeping the sun out in the summer on a full height window.
Yeah,
So these floor to ceiling windows here, there's a concrete slab inside here that
nice.
is cantilevered over this doorway.
So that's kind of your trome wall, so to speak, right? Your thermal mass.
Just a
mass. Yeah.
thermal mass on the interior. It's kind of interesting. We'll see an interior picture. That's in 2016. I took this picture. So the house,
Wow.
it's still the same door I put on.
Oh my gosh. It looks like original siding probably too.
It is the original siding. Let's see what else.
Geez, Charlie, you didn't use LP siding?
No LP.
Did you remind me again? You said this was a 2x4 wall system.
This is 2x6.
2x6.
At this point, I talked to him. I told him I wasn't interested in building a 2x4 house, and he came back a couple weeks later and said, "Well, what are you interested in building?" so I came up with this house with 2x6s. Not much of an improvement, but for 1975, this was way ahead of.
Yeah.
Thought building a 2x6. What are you, nuts?
And what type of insulation did you use in the exterior walls?
This would have been all cellulose.
Cellulose.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's the interior, those big windows. You can see this is the cement slab. Well, the can down below, this is the dividing line. So this slab goes underneath the hardwood floor, the same distance, so that it balances. It would be a lot of weight to put out hanging over.
Yeah, you couldn't have it just on the cantilever, right?
No, it'd be really hard to support.
Has that thing sagged at all when you went back? Did you go back in all the years later?
Oh no, it looked fine.
Nice.
Did you get any feedback on comfort from that, from doing that thermal mass?
Some of these houses I have feedback on. This one I don't. Nobody was home. When I went back in 2016, I went to about 6 or 8 of my houses, and I got into a few of them. I got to stay overnight in one of them.
Cool.
So I have good information on some of them, but not much information on some of them.
It's such a good question, Tessa. It's such a hard thing when you're an inspector or even a builder, like comfort. You really have to live in it, and you almost have to live in it for like a year to really know, right?
Through all the seasons and
Yeah.
And of course, having built one for myself that was of these vintages, I know about the comfort related to that house. So at any rate, so with these houses, because they're oriented 10 degrees west, east of magnetic north, you could actually turn them into compasses, into sundials rather. So this is sometime around noon. I don't know exactly.
Cool.
The
Christmas tree is telling us it's noon.
Yeah.
This is my own house. This is my shop down here. And this is my this is the way the house was built originally, 1976. With the active, this is a hot air active solar system. And this is a great example of how you learn about the economics of energy efficiency when you build a house that only costs $150 a year to heat electrically.
Wow.
So when you get to $150 and you put in an active solar system like this panel system that costs, well, it cost me probably $5,000 or $6,000 in materials. What's the payback?
Yeah.
If it gains you 75% of $150. I mean, it just never pencils out. You better take that $7,000 and make your wall sticker. You know,
Yeah.
so you play these numbers games that they're really hard to get a handle on when you get super insulated and really efficient.
Well, it's the math starts getting absolutely ridiculous if you start looking at like 100-year time horizons, which is not for the occupant, but if you look at the building,
That's
over
right.
100 years, like how many fancy heat pumps are you going to go through? I mean, there's like 5 heat pumps or something, and or more, depending if that. Hopefully, they work well, and you only need 4 or 5 of them. But
Yeah.
anyway,
So you want to do your house system such that you minimize the number of times you replace the mechanicals, the
yeah,
expensive stuff.
yeah.
This is 76. This is a intentional berm here so that the wind, this is the predominant weather direction, so the snow would drift in front of the panels. So in the winter, you're maximizing reflection onto the panels.
Cool.
Those panels would get really hot.
Wow.
Amazing. There was a 8-foot by 8-foot by 30-foot bin in the basement full of stones that stored all the heat of these panels, and it
What?
worked great.
That's
Wait, say that
awesome.
again. You had rocks in the basement that would gain solar heat gain that would then radiate heat to the rest of the house
Yeah.
after the sun went down.
Yeah.
I have to chime in. There's more than rocks in his basement.
Yeah.
I
think
think go with the
awesome.
rocks in my head.
So,
right?
quick question, Charlie. Obviously, what about radon in that area?
Yeah, these houses all tested negatory from radon because of the wood foundation system, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Syracuse University used to come and tour through this house every year, and it's kind of interesting because the students were just flabbergasted when they'd see the utility bills laid out on the counter, and because people just don't believe it. And that's another aspect to building super insulated houses, and you're building them at similar costs to conventional houses. People just don't believe you. I was called a liar right to my face. I mean, just you're faking it somehow.
Charles, was this house a 2x6 wall with cellulose as well? Do you remember?
This was 2x8.
Oh wow!
By this house, I had moved to 2x8s.
And were you using just a standard, stud, or I guess it'd be a joist, or what were you using?
Yeah, and this house at 2x8, I used regular dimensional 2x8s.
Yeah. Okay.
So after that, when all the houses after this one, well, I did do 2 more with 2x8s, and then I went to 2x10s.
And no roof overhangs really. I mean, little mini ones, but
Yeah, not much because I don't know floor to ceiling windows really. So you could get away with the shorter overhangs, and that's something that I would never do that again. I put
Yeah.
4-foot overhangs everywhere. I just think they're so important to the long-term life of the house, the cost of Cost of a 4-foot overhang all around the house will easily pay for itself in the siding you don't have to replace.
Yeah.
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 Hey, Charlie.
Yeah.
You know, there's a statistic that if you have no overhangs on your walls, you risk with conventional wall framing, you have a 90% wall failure.
Yeah,
You put a
believe it.
1-foot overhang on, you drop that to 70%, 60 to
That's
70. You
awesome.
put a 2-foot overhang on, you're 30 to 40% wall failure. Put a 4-foot overhang on, you can build a piece of crap wall and not have failure.
I know.
And
Yeah,
you probably don't.
You
You
could
probably
use
don't even
OSB
need to
siding,
paint.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't even need to paint your walls.
yeah, you
So
could staple some license plates on there, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah. So you're confirming my madness, Mark.
Mark,
No,
do you have like like any kind of graphic for that? I mean, that's just it's talking my language here.
You know, it's stuff that I learned from talking to people. And one time I did find it on the internet. I did some engineering firm had done a study. I don't have it. Well, I got
Yeah,
it somewhere.
I'll go
have,
dig around. It's a great way to think of it. It's awesome. I
yeah,
love it.
I
Yeah.
have 8 2-terabyte hard drives that are almost full. And I did work on a house that did have cedar siding on it, had 4-foot overhangs, and they never had to paint it. So
yeah, we're
until
gonna
the
see a
tree
good
fell
picture
on
of one of my own houses here that had 4-foot overhangs all around, and they put an addition on it with only 1-foot overhang, and you'll see the siding difference.
Yeah, interesting.
Mhm.
So
Mark, I've seen that statistic somewhere too. I forget where I saw that at.
Here I am on the roof of my house, and this is the venting above the roof. Putting strips over plywood and then another layer of plywood, so I had 1.5 inches airspace above all the insulation. Big fan
that's
of
awesome.
ventilating roofs.
Yeah.
I have not gotten on board with the unvented roof. And you can see how this was all screened across under here. Anybody know
What's
what
up with-
this thing is?
Yeah, I was gonna tease you about that. Where do you plug that thing in, Charlie?
People don't realize, you had to have the skills to be able to bend those teeth and sharpen those teeth yourself a couple times before you send it off to be professionally sharpened. And that was skills that we all had, whether it was for circular saw blades but now you got carbide saw blades. Nobody uses a sharpenable saw blade anymore, do they?
Hey,
I do remember when the boss brought around sharpened steel saw blades. They never cut better the carbide does not cut as good as a newly sharpened steel blade, but the newly sharpened steel blade lasts about a half a day.
Yeah, that's right. I had probably 80 blades and 40 of them were always at the sharpener, and I'd just trade them out every whenever.
Yeah, we had 7.25-inch skill saws and a 6.5-inch skill saw, and once they were sharpened enough to where they had to go in the 6.5, you knew you were getting your money's worth out of the blade.
Sure, Tessa's never seen anything like this.
I actually built a little shed for myself when I was younger, and that's the only saw we had, and I used it, and it was super dull and very frustrating. And
No, but I mean this uninhabitable weather here.
Oh, you're talking about that. I was actually going to say, I was going to add one thing about that ventilated roof deck. So, in Minneapolis, I worked for a home performance company for a while, and a big problem we have up here is ice dams, as you know, and a lot of the 1.5-story houses that have the slant, roofs, are just really problematic for that. And it doesn't matter how much insulation you put in the slants. Usually it's like a 2x4 and you will still melt, snow on the roof. And so we had a client one time who money was not an issue, and they said, I just don't want to deal with ice dams anymore. And so that's what we did. We just built an air gap and then a secondary roof deck on top of that, and it took care of the problem.
Did you add more insulation under the first like a rigid foam or something?
Yes. Yep. So
Yeah.
it was, so it was the top roof deck, airspace, rigid foam, another roof deck, and then close cell spray foam.
Wow.
So
Cool.
On the inside.
what value did you get to in that whole sandwich?
Well, it would have been like 4 inches of close cell at 7 per inch plus another R5 for the roof deck.
Cool.
Yeah, this was R60 cellulose
Wow.
here. So
Wow. Pretty impressive.
There's and that's where that vent would be right there.
Mm-hmm.
See.
Wow.
So here's the what it looked like without the glass on it, and you can see that the cool air came up, circulated through, and went back in hot. And this is what it looked like inside.
What are we looking at there, Charlie? What are the vents?
With left side or right side?
Well, both.
Yeah. So yeah, back up one slide here. Behind all this glass, like this is one panel. Every 2 spaces is a panel in this one right here. Does that make sense? So the air came through this circuit here like this and heated up, and the sun was on it, and then that air was all pulled through the stone bin in the basement.
Okay.
Wait, so would the warm air rise like with convection? It would just heat up in this panel, rise through the tube, and then as it would cool down, it would fall.
It would thermosiphon a little bit, but it wouldn't thermosiphon enough, so it had a blower on it.
Okay. Huh. Charlie, was this something you invented, or is this like I mean, did you create this?
Yeah.
This was your idea?
Yeah.
For how to capture heat from the sun and circulate it throughout the house?
And I just going by some ideas that were in Mother Earth News and things like that,
Cool.
read articles and Popular Mechanics or whatever, and just apply them to what I wanted to do.
So can you explain all the little vents, like where are they going? Like, because there's a main trunk line running horizontally and then the 2 vertical lines. Like I'm still not totally getting all that.
Well, this connection right here is right at these 2.
Yeah.
And down here, these are much lower than this duct. They're way at the bottom of this slope. So those come right out of the top of the stone bin.
I gotcha.
So then a blower on the end of this duct over here out of the picture would pull air through the panel and then into the stone bin.
Cool.
Warm.
In the stone
not
bin,
cool.
I had 200 feet of 3-inch copper to preheat the water to the water heater.
Nice.
So that was another.
Did that work pretty well?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
it's solar hot water.
Better than running 30-degree well water into the water heater.
Yeah, you'd preheat your water before it hit the water heater.
Anything would help, but at today's prices, would you ever pay for that 3-inch copper?
Yeah.
But in 1975, 76, 3-inch copper wasn't outrageous. I mean, so then we took the panels off once I figured out that that's just too much money to spend. It's not something I wanted to promote. So I moved away from that to just super insulating, airtight, orient the house a little bit, get away from the active systems. Don't spend money on active systems that have no chance of paying for themselves. So we took the solar collectors off, made a little sunroom here, and notice we have the little bit bigger overhang over these now. And this is a solar hot water heater panel I made, and that's got that worked by thermosiphon. The water heater was down in the basement down here, and what it was made of is I took flexible copper and I flattened it like that, and then it was all painted black as a way to heat the water for the water heater.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing worked really good. It would get over 200 degrees in these inside the panel here on the black surface. This was the next house I built. I built this house at the same time I built that other, the one for myself. I would be on the job on this one at 4 a.m. and work until 1 and go home and work on my own house until 10 at night, you know.
What a cool building. This, were you like
Yeah.
vacationing in like Mexico or something? You got it's got like the Mayan pyramid
Well,
roof
this
line.
house was interesting. It's located on this bluff right over behind the house here is Lake Ontario. And I had all the wind data from the nuclear power plant, which was 2 miles to the east. And this site gets 100-mile-an-hour winds in the winter routinely. So we designed the house to deal with those heavy winds, and that's why it kind of slopes to the ground to the wind side.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Neat.
And,
Wow.
and this house underwent quite the remodel later on. Here's the house, what it looks like today.
Wow.
I didn't build the deck. That was something else added. This was a little crow's nest office that I built for him up there. It had this little spiral stairs going to it, illegal spiral stairs, but
Yeah.
not
Nice guard.
not really a living space up there. So
Charles, did you build those stairs by hand?
I did, yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
I built about 10 or 15 of these over the years. They eventually met current standards, but the early ones certainly would not meet code for sure. Not today's code, if ever. But this is how how they're built. These you get these blocks that separate the treads, and each tread has a pattern, and you just mark the holes, whatever degrees you need different to have them space out automatically.
Wow.
They drilled for the balusters here.
Fun.
But you can see that these are threaded rods. They screw into a plate on the floor and a plate at the very top. So they're all just kind of pinched together to support the cantilever of the treads.
Charles, you were fearless, weren't you?
I had the great fortune of having fun clients that like to play as well.
Uh-huh. You weren't afraid to try new things and experiment.
Yeah. This is one I did here in Seattle. This was 1988. I know that because I had to get it done so that both his kid and my kid could get born. Right, Eamon? Eamon knows
awesome.
these stairs. It's a funny story because I built these stairs and kind of didn't have any contact with them for years, and then they ended up on the same soccer field, those two boys, when they were 12.
That's awesome. Well, you did the kids a favor by putting a guard on that one, Charlie.
Yeah. But this is just a close-up of what that looked like.
Is that where they got to practice their rock climbing at, going up underneath it?
Yeah.
Probably. That's looking up under the underside.
That's really cool.
So now we're
Wonder
back in
what would it cost today to build a staircase like that with materials?
I was building those for about 12,000 back in 2000, year 2000-ish. So, that's kind of the price range, but
Okay.
they'd be pricey today.
Uh-huh.
I also had I did the plans up and I sold a whole bunch of put them in Mother Earth News and sold them for $10. And every once in a while I get $10 in the mail for the
That's awesome.
this is now we're back in that same house again with the crow's nest. This is the kitchen. I built this kitchen.
Wow.
So
You built all the cabinets in it?
uh-huh.
Wow.
And we just build them on site?
Yeah, these were all built on site. I built I build all the boxes and frames on site and then the doors, and I'd build in my cabinet shop. This is look at that old refrigerator, eh?
Yeah, harvest gold.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So this is the kitchen waste for the composting toilet system. I was a dealer for Clivis Multrum composting toilet, and I put them in about 6 houses, I think. So the idea was that they have to be stocked with kitchen waste and just general vegetative debris in order for the whole system to work. So you'd kind of locate this opposite where the toilet part is. So the toilet would be just on the other side of this wall. And there's one.
When
this
you would
is-
lift that lid, Charles, like in the kitchen to put in organic waste, like from the kitchen, I guess, or composting waste, would it smell?
No, never any odor with this system unless you had you could have an inversion theoretically, but when I had to give up my Clivis Multrum, these bathrooms never stink like a regular bathroom. They just, it's hard to fathom and hard to understand, but I love the Clivis Multrum system.
Are they still around today?
They
People
are. In fact, a lot of the state parks in Washington State use Clivis Multrums. Clivis Multrum was the pet project of Abby Rockefeller, Nelson Rockefeller's daughter. That she wanted to do something with all her money, and so that was kind of her pet project.
She didn't want it to go to waste.
Yeah.
Nice one, Tessa.
Sorry.
So that's what the unit looks like. This is the one that was in my house. And you can see there's 2 tubes here. One is for kitchen waste and one is for the toilet. And that was their bumper sticker.
How often did you have to clean it?
Oh, it takes 4 years before you can get anything out of it.
Okay.
So we only just barely started getting stuff out of it by the time we moved on. But
I did run into one of these, God, it was a few years ago.
On an inspection, Donnie?
Yes, correct. Yep.
Yeah.
So now we're up to 1977. This is like a greenhouse, and there was a trome wall inside here. Everybody know what a trome wall is? It's just a masonry wall that absorbs the heat of the greenhouse, and this had a duct to the back rooms of the house and back to circulate that heat to the house. But you can see the big overhangs on this house. And
I did a house with a trome wall. Unfortunately, they connected it to the garage. Kind of a bad idea.
So this is the house in 2016, later or so. You see where they put the addition on? Look at the
Mhm.
difference what the overhang makes to the
Yeah.
siding.
There we go.
Great shot.
Visual proof.
No, it's an awesome shot. The
Yeah.
deck they obviously took the greenhouse out and whatnot. This house had an interesting story. I went to the yard and I banged on the door and nobody would come to the door, but I was so curious about it. I just kept banging on the door and eventually somebody came to the door and they were just nervous about a stranger knocking on the door. But eventually they warmed up and they shared some really cool information about the house.
Neat.
We'll talk about in a second. So here's the framing of that house. You can see the wood foundation system. This is where it comes out at grade, and when it steps down and it's pressure treated with insulation between the studs below grade. And this was a 2x8 house, so not yet anywhere near what I got at eventually by 1987, actually. Yeah. So this is you can see just the framing of the wall there, and of course get joist hangers on all of these because the fill is so high on that backside. And another shot of it. This is through the greenhouse. The trome wall would have been probably about here, all the way across. All right, the solution that wasn't necessary. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall when they were doing this. They flooded this space, flooded the whole foundation, which if you've flooded a foundation of a wood foundation, you have really mucked up somehow. So if you can imagine, this is the framing, this is the foundation, and the proper way is you've got a perimeter drain and it's on the inside like this. So that way you're protecting it out from ever collecting debris on the outside, etc. So that's typically where that perimeter drain went. Well, after the flood, they cut all the way around the entire inside of the foundation and took that slab out. And I was in there and I said, I mean, couldn't they have taken a little bit out and then found that the pipe was there? But at any rate, two different crews, I guess. Yes, guys to cut the slab and remove it, and then another one to put in the drain. I would just love to have been there when they put the first shovel in there and found that drain already there.
So how did it flood with the drain there? I don't.
Because it was clogged where it daylighted.
Oh, wow. So it was working fine and then it got clogged. And what a great lesson. And, whenever I do inspections on high-tech houses, a lot of the greenhouses here are like super expensive with all this gear in them. But once the first owner goes, nobody knows how any of the stuff works.
And now the plans are gone.
Yeah, I mean, and you're like, did you know you had this heat recovery ventilator up in the attic, and you've got, like this thing that makes the floors hot, and like, nobody has any clue about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Dylan, half the owners don't know about it when they have it installed. They go, "Oh, that's a great idea," and they still don't know how to work it.
Yeah, I mean, hard enough for the first owner, but once you get a couple owners away, it's like the information just disappears.
So they cut that slab away at any rate, and then put the sump pump in there, and they were all good to go. But just the most bizarre. So this was another house.
Is this a wood foundation as well, Charlie?
Yeah. Every house I built had a wood foundation except that very first one with the solar panels.
Wow, crazy. So you were like master of the treated wood for what's the treated wood you got to use for those?
foundation grade. Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't there like a little acronym? It's like
PMF.
is that it?
Permanent wood
Well,
foundations.
Yeah, there you go.
it has an FDN label.
I have to be honest with you, Charles. I have a slight prejudice against permanent wood foundations. I mean, even if, like, the soil conditions are, water drains well, you've got good water management and all of that. Like, I still feel like there's a big potential risk of using wood below grade as a foundation.
Everybody does, but
Tessa, I built one.
if you use the right wood, though, it really can't rot.
89.
So yeah, you can have
and
water
it's
issues,
still
but you
in
can have water
existence
issues with any
today.
foundation.
It's still in 89. I built one. It's still in existence today. My son owns it, and it is the driest basement around. Yeah.
So Charles, you never had any, like, these houses you built with wood foundations, you've gone back and checked a lot of them and they're okay?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to see some more pictures
Okay.
And to get to sort of Mark and Charlie, that you guys are advocates for these, is it partly that you have to be more careful with the site work, and so that just buys you all this wiggle room, like that you're actually doing the site work well?
Yeah, you actually pay attention to drainage, God forbid.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I always feel like the concrete guys just dig a quick ditch and
if
start
you have a
pouring the
concrete foundation with water issues, isn't it a drainage issue?
Yeah,
Yeah, you do the
100%.
drainage wrong, you do the backfill wrong. I mean, the wood foundation, you don't backfill with anything on site.
Yeah.
Backfill with drainable gravel, and all the issues. I go all over the state looking at wood foundations, and all the ones that have issues were not done right.
Yep. Yeah. We put 8 inches of gravel down on the floor. I put a wood floor in mine on sleepers.
Wow.
And then you backfill with gravel, and it drains better than anything. And then my walls were 2x8 walls, foot on center. I had a 60-foot long wall. We stood all in one place, in one section, with the 3/4 inch treated plywood on it. The heaviest wall I ever lifted.
I wanted to come back to this because right in this corner, we hit a 40-gallon-a-minute spring. And that one, we literally stuffed a 4-inch pipe into that vein and ran it to daylight, so that it wouldn't ever impact the foundation. I wondered in some ways if they blocked that one up too, and that
until the squirrels put their acorns in it.
Yeah,
that's right. At any rate, we'll move on from that. So that was kind of an interesting story. This house was 1978, I think. Yeah. And again, a lot of the same principles as the other houses. This one was also 2x8 house. So I did quite a few 2x8s. Never again, but wood foundation. This house, an interesting story. There's the Clivus Multrum vent there. What's that, Dylan?
Oh, I like your little drip leg for the service entrance below the meter.
Yeah, there's an obvious drip loop. Huh?
Yeah.
Good job.
But this house is a funny story because I was driving out of the driveway and I looked in my rearview mirror and saw smoke coming out of all the vent up here. And I ran back to the house, and we were using the wood-burning chimney to heat the house during construction, and cellulose had gotten into the chase around that insulated chimney, steel metal buses chimney, and was just charring. It actually had charred off all the bottom plates of the walls of the chase, and the cellulose kept it from actually catching on fire, but the paint was all melting off the walls.
Oh my gosh.
At the base of that flue. So it's a lesson. You got to be careful where that cellulose goes because it likes to go wherever it can.
Before we leave the wood foundation questions, I was just curious what drew you to doing wood foundations in the first place. This is
Well,
before
it's a
people were
way
talking
of
about
getting,
carbon and all that stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna really get to the whole theory of how these houses work so well, and that's a little bit more complicated, but I'll get to your question, Mark. So this was 1979. It's a duplex, and so you can obviously the room you can see by the roof that it's a duplex. We built these trusses on site. See what else about it. These all have insulated shutters that you could close over the windows. We'll talk about that. But this house I entered in a competition for the state of New York. Energy Research and Development Administration ran this contest for super insulated houses, and I got mine selected, and it was a $10,000 price, which paid for the $10,000 shortfall I made on the house.
Charlie, you were never a good capitalist, were you?
I was never a good capitalist. No. Anybody seen a low profile meter like that? These were really popular back in 1979, upstate New York. Then a lot of these low profile meters. Notice that the missing post. This was another little fun thing that, well, they didn't want a post there, so I came up with a way to get rid of that post with a threaded metal rod that created a little truss to re-support the middle of that beam to get rid of the post. And then you got the mistletoe and the dog.
That would be post tension wood framing.
Yeah.
Yes. Very clever. And by the way, those low meters, didn't the state of New York get in trouble for hiring underage meter readers that were short?
I don't know. I don't know anything about that. So this is the book my house was published in. I still got a couple of copies of it, but that's what it looks like. I think I forget how many houses they gave that award to.
That's pretty cool, Charlie.
Charlie, were you doing the truss walls at this time?
No, this house was a 2x8.
Okay.
So this is from just a Photoshop from the book, and they got some stuff wrong. It's hydronic baseboard, 30-gallon electric water heater with 2 zones. In the book, it says that it was hydronic oil heat, which is like, what the heck? I never built a house with oil heat. But so at any rate, hydronic baseboard. They said it had a 400 square foot direct gain double glazing solar collector. It had no solar collectors on it, so I don't know what that was about. But I like this. This is their juror's comment. Highly repeatable. God, that just made my day.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Because that's really what I'm after. To be highly repeatable means that just any carpenter with any amount of real skill could do these houses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is the sliding shutters. So next to each window there would have been a space with 2x6 construction, so that you could have a space to run a window, insulated shutter in. And these shutters were made with 2 layers of homosoap board. Do you know what that is? It's a kind of an insulation board. And they sort of work, but the problem with them is that you can never make them airtight enough so that cold glass you'd have to be diligent about wiping the glass off every time you open them.
Mm.
So my theory is I like the idea of having shutters over windows, but do it on the outside.
Yeah, yeah, that's tricky doing it on the inside,
It's
huh?
really hard to do inside.
Yeah. Just ask all the people in modern houses that put like, those like staple curtains over their windows and never open them, right? It's just a little mold pit.
We'll see some professional insulated shutters on a house coming up here in a bit that they were pretty good, and they seem to work, but I don't have any data on long-term use and how successful they were. So here we get into now we're going to get into the whole theory of how these houses work and why wood foundations made a lot of sense for them. The idea was that you wanted to take a super insulated bubble and put it into the ground below frost level. So you can see we are at R30, 40, or 60. And the idea is that you then have access to constant ground temperature of 50 degrees. A little higher than that in most places. So the idea is that then you are never heating from more than 50 degrees to 70 as opposed to ambient. Every house built today is heating from ambient to desired temperature.
Yeah.
If you live in Minnesota and it's minus 30, you're heating from minus 30 to 68 indoors.
But you connect the thermal envelope to the constant temperature of the earth, and
that's right.
So
that's the only way you can get away from that is to couple it with the earth. But everybody is going to insulating under the slabs and all of that. I think it's just so short-sighted. At any rate, that's
and that's code to
yeah,
insulate that slab.
Well, I don't think under a basement, is it?
No, you're right. It's probably a garage, right?
If you do a slab on grade, it has to be insulated under it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the way the foundation is built, it automatically vents radon. Most of my houses were tested for radon by Syracuse University, and they never came back above 2. So and it's high radon area in upstate New York. So
and that's because of all the gravel, the drainage work that you did essentially ended up being a soil gas mitigator.
Yeah, and the fact that the footings sit on a foot of pea gravel.
Yeah. I muted you, Frank. It was just getting all garbled, but feel free to unmute if you had something that just it wasn't coming in
Barry
clearly.
too.
Oh, sorry.
So this is 2016. That house that won the ERDA award. You see, siding's a little tattered, but it looked okay. I didn't get into that one. This is that house doing the wood foundation under construction. Just some quick shots of what framing a wood foundation and the deck. And
it's really such a fascinating point of view to me, the wood foundation, that it works because you just pay so much attention to drainage, and the poured concrete foundations will often not work simply because they just don't pay attention to drainage. And it's like that's the secret. It's amazing.
You can make any kind of foundation work if you get the drainage right. But the point of my house is that the 2x8 or 2x6 foundation wood automatically sets you're up to go immediately for wiring, plumbing, insulating. If you got a concrete foundation, you got to add that either inside, outside, both. So it's much more expensive to do a concrete foundation.
A little quick one in my area, they can't even do surface drainage, right? You expect them to do anything else, right?
Yeah, there's me and why I have no back left.
Yeah. Look at all that gravel.
Wow.
All
Jeez.
these houses we built, we did all this by hand. There was no bobcats to get
What?
down in there or anything. We just
Charlie,
sat-
that site work looks awful. Were you guys digging in like shale or
That's
something?
right. Look at 6 inches of topsoil and then just shale. You
Jeez.
should have
By
seen
hand?
You should have seen that. No, we dug that with a backhoe, but you should have seen the size of the backhoe to dig that.
It
was
must have been massive. I mean, that's
humongous
some hard
backhoe.
digging.
But here you can see all the forms for the or not the forms, the walls.
Walls.
We pre-built them all up in his garage during the winter and brought them down here. I think there's still some snow around the ground. 1983. I had to rush home for Liam on this one. All these houses I can associate with my kids.
That's awesome.
So,
Love it.
this is a view of that. It's an octagonal shaped house.
So you're still into the 2x8s.
This house was actually the first 2x10 house.
Oh, wow.
The foundation part had to be dimensional lumber, but there was another wall built inside of this wall
Oh,
to get up to the same R value. So
I got you.
Yeah.
You did a double wall on this house?
Uh-huh.
Charlie, are the base of the studs like notched into the framing?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask that. There's no sill plate or bottom plate. Doesn't look like.
Well, this is a 4-foot crawl space, so these were 12-foot walls
Oh,
that just went on by the rim joist is just bolted to these all the studs.
Oh, I see.
floor framing is hanging from the exterior wall.
Yeah, it's balloon framed essentially.
Yeah, it's balloon framed. Crazy. Wow.
Let's see what else I got here. So this is the first view of the truss studs. This is that octagon house.
You should patent this and build it, Charlie.
So every bay, 5 holes essentially in order to dense pack these 10-inch walls, and even that, not totally happy with. I would tell people doing this today that you can expect to have to go back in 5 years and repack the top.
Settle
You
a
just
little bit.
can't in a 10-inch bay. In my personal opinion, you cannot pack a wall that has free flowing through all the joists, all the studs. You just can't get the 3.5 pounds of density you need with that.
I wonder
So
if
there
there's
may
a
be some
difference
other
in the
ways around it,
material.
but what's
I
that?
wonder if there's a difference in settling from the cellulose that's blown in today versus what was used in the 80s.
I don't know what the difference would be. I wonder if maybe wet spraying the
Yeah.
cellulose in would be better.
That's what I was just thinking, because I mean that's what they do primarily, right? I don't know if are there any people on this call that you see that in new construction a lot? Is that the primary?
Not very often, but I have seen it
Yeah.
maybe a couple times ever that anybody did a wet spray cellulose.
Okay.
I built a house with wet spray cellulose, and
did?
I did, and
Mark.
the drying time is a little longer, and no one wants to wait for it to dry.
Yeah.
And they claim they put all kinds of mold inhibitors in it, but I took off a section of drywall and there was a little bit of mold developing in it. I like the wet spray. They blow it in, and then they have this big a little round scrubber that goes between 3 studs, and it scrubs off what they do, and then they can sweep it up and put it back in and run it again. It's a good concept, but there is some limiting factors, especially in our climate zone or your climate zone, trying to do it in our cold season.
Yeah,
It doesn't
honestly,
dry as well.
I personally would just do the loose fill like I have and just figure on repacking that top. It's not a big deal. And with infrared, it's easy to tell where it needs to be added back in. I don't, it's an acceptable, given how super the insulation is and how airtight it makes the house. I just think it's worth it. But at any rate, maybe somebody
That'd be
can
your
come up-
insulation of choice over all the year, all the different houses you built.
Yeah,
would be
fiberglass is a totally 4-letter word, and spray foam is out of the question because of the expense.
cost. Yeah.
You know, I just ran some quick numbers to do that house that I had the berm. If I did the roof of that with spray foam to R60, it was like $24,000. Whereas I could do the same thing with cellulose today for 4,000. So I just
yeah.
no.
And I think one of the things too you get with the cellulose that a lot of people never think is how much quieter your home will be.
Yeah.
There's a very difference between a fiberglass versus cellulose home when it comes to sound.
You know, I've heard that, but supposedly there isn't any difference. So I don't
hear it though. I mean, at least maybe it's a little bit anecdotal. You know.
Yeah, I know. I used to say myself that I think in my houses the reason it was so much quieter with cellulose is because the sound is broken. You don't have it communicating through the stud.
Yeah, you don't have any thermal bridging.
Yeah, so at any rate, so that's the holes for that, and then of course the headers, they're insulated. See some drawings of how that works in a bit.
Could you talk a little bit about your order of operation? Since you're blowing cellulose in from the outside, you need that wall done on the inside, but you can't really dry in the outside. So how did you account for that?
Yeah, you have to drywall before you can insulate with this system, and it accomplishes a couple of things. And because you're blowing it in under pressure, we wanted to glue all the drywall. So what's that do? That improves air tightness as well. You know, if you look at
but you had everything all weathered in, and then you would have to get, I mean, you got wiring and plumbing and stuff in your way too, right?
That's all in place, yeah. Most of the wiring just runs along the bottom plate in these walls, not you know, you go along the bottom plate and up to the receptacle down and do it that way, as opposed to there's no holes to drill.
Right? Yeah.
So would you use like a weather resistive barrier on the exterior, then blow in the insulation, then put the siding on?
The weather resistant barrier didn't go on until after the insulation went in. So, and that was always felt paper. I never used anything but felt paper ever in my building career.
So did you just not drill the holes until you're ready to do the insulation?
That's right.
So that, okay.
Until you're ready to drywall, actually. So that means after electrical, after plumbing, et cetera, and you would put the drywall on, and then you would insulate before you finished the drywall, obviously, because it's just safer.
Okay.
But
super cool. And Charlie, did you wire these yourself?
I did, yeah.
And you plumb them yourself?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Did you ever get?
You could do that back then.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible how far we've come. I mean, I always think of a builder today as basically like somebody that wears a suit and tie.
Yeah.
You know,
they all had to pass inspection. An electrical inspector, he would, you know, there was no prohibition in New York State for anybody can wire in New York State. You just have to get it all inspected. At least back then, until I left in '87, that was the case. So here's making the zigzags. This is CDX, ACX plywood.
Is this for the wall truss? You're building a wall truss here?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
This is cutting the zigzags to make the wall trusses. Like to make these trusses, it's got a plywood zigzag glued and nailed on both sides of 2x2s. So you can see that you take a 2x4, rip it in half, space them further apart. I'm using less lumber than I would in a 2x4 house, and got a 10-inch wall.
Hmm.
So that's
You started with a 2x4?
Yeah.
So each side of that, yeah, okay, cool.
And I ripped 2x4s because it's a little bit more meat than if you just buy a 2x2. A 2x2 is a 1.5 by 1.5. 2x4 is going to be 1.75 inches by 1.5 inches.
Did you have to get any of that design tested and approved by any engineers?
Yeah. These were engineered.
Okay.
I just came across all that engineering the other day, putting this together.
Wow.
It's kind of fun to see.
We
You know, with wood today, it's amazing that this hasn't become a standard that we go to a truss wall.
I know.
And it would stabilize that wood better.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just don't understand why
Well,
we
how
don't
they're
do
not
it.
wildly different than the little wood eye joists that we use today,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And,
That's what I mean. That's what, look how much more stable those are than dimensional lumber is today.
Yeah.
and the eye joists aren't going to like get rid of thermal bridging, but they're really going to reduce it, I would think, right? I mean, there's just, you don't have nearly that mass.
Hey, guys, take a look at the T stud.
Yeah, I don't like the T-stud.
Well, but it still accomplishes a little bit of what you did. I just wanted to throw it out there. Okay.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I know the T-stud. I think that's an expensive way to do this. But I don't know. And I don't think you can do these. Any carpenter can build these on site,
Mm-hmm.
which is another thing that I like about them. But so
Well, that's if you have carpenters on site.
I was gonna say that takes someone with some skill.
So I used to be able to get like all the zigzags I would need for a typical house out of 4 sheets. If I needed more than that, I would put a 5th sheet under, and that sheet would get marked for stacking however many more sheets I needed on top.
Yeah. And you used a little jigsaw for it to cut them out?
Well, I would drop a handsaw down in and make the as much of a cut as possible, and then finish cut with the jigsaw.
Gotcha.
Wow.
Man, that's a lot of cutting, man.
Oh my
Jeez.
God.
It was, but you could make all those zigzags in 3 or 4 hours, and then you're all set to go, and you're knocking them together. So this is that octagon house. Notice all the roof. What do you notice about that roof?
Yeah, where are the icicles, Charlie?
Yeah, it's missing its appropriate icicles, isn't it?
And no bald spots.
No bald spots. Yeah.
No gutters. This house performed really well. R60 roof, raised heel trusses. So this is the house. This is the wall I built along here, and you can see in the next picture they replaced that with a stone wall at some point. We'll kind of go around the house here.
No gutters.
No gutters. And look at this. This is my favorite picture. The guy. I didn't take this picture after. 30 years after I installed the roof, they replaced the shingle roof, and this is him cleaning it up. And I told him, I said, nice job replacing the plywood. And he said, no, that's your plywood. So
beautiful.
Don't see any sign of ice dams, do you?
Wow. And isn't that, correct me if I'm wrong, but in part of that story too, you didn't use underlayment for these shingles, isn't that right?
Paper.
No underlayment, and there's no swelling at the seams, like from interior moisture from the house getting up and creating damage.
No, there's no interior moisture getting in there from the house because it's all painted on vapor barrier on all insulated walls and ceilings.
And it's
You
all
did yeah. No, so it was all paint vapor barrier. That's all you
Yeah.
used?
Zero perm primer. Two coats of zero perm primer.
well, and it's blown in cellulose at all
Yeah.
those, right?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
So I
60.
mean, that's
Yeah.
gonna that much cellulose is gonna be so hard for water. Even if you get water starting to get in there, it's gonna get absorbed by the cellulose probably, and then dry out.
An interesting thing to note about this roof is how clean it is. And that's why I at first thought he had replaced it, is because if you've replaced enough roofs on plywood, you know that the felt paper stains the roof.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
You have all these black stains all over the place, and there was none there. That's pretty
Super
fun.
cool.
Another thing about this house is I got the ventilation totally mucked up. Up high here, there were 8, because of octagon, there were 8 vents, and 6 of them, 2 of them were for mechanicals. One was kitchen exhaust and one was for bathroom. And so my ratio low vent to high vent was 85-15. 85 low,
Intake
15
And 15
high.
high.
and exhaust.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
You'd
Ruh-roh.
think ruh-roh, but it was
Did
fine.
okay.
But
now we're
so
in,
Charlie, that had an attic configuration then, not vaulted ceiling.
it's scissor
Mhm.
trusses.
Okay, so
Yeah,
the
but
cellulose in the attic was blown in, but like not pressurized, basically just sort of blown in, whereas the
That's right.
walls you did that are like pressurized.
Yeah. So now we're down in the crawl space of that house. There's well pump. We'll just crawl around down there for a second.
Hmm.
This house, we had huge problems with moisture control after the house was built. It had double poly with all the seams caulked to the sill plates all the way around. I still couldn't get the humidity low enough, so we went back in and put a slab over it. And even before the slab was cured, the moisture levels dropped. I can't stress my plan at all crawl spaces get a slab.
Mm-hmm.
It's just essential.
So what was you were just getting moisture migration up through the gravel? Is that what was going on?
Through the gravel and through any pinholes from walking on the
Yep.
plastic. It just
Yep.
wasn't adequate. So here I just pulled back the insulation. I wanted to see how dry it was behind here. It looked fine. It's been dry as a bone. And
What kind of prep work under the slab do you recommend?
What's that?
What do you recommend under the slab?
Any 6 mil poly. I like double 6 mil, but I think 6 mil, one layer of 6 mil poly and concrete is more than enough in most cases, I would think.
And
What
you
about
had
gravel?
you had all your gravel under that, right?
Oh yeah, there's a foot of pea gravel under all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is this wall supports a brick wall up above. These pictures are all 30 years over after construction. So if you see any signs of moisture in the air, it looks all pretty dry, right?
Yeah.
I took moisture
Very dry.
readings and they were like 6 and 7%.
That's awesome.
Wow. Is that
And,
crawl space heated, Charles? How did you heat this house?
This crawl space is not heated, no. And originally it was designed to have, I had air intakes that went from the foundation outdoors. And the idea was that whenever the wood stove was used, its combustion air would get drawn into the crawl space to preheat it for the combustion air.
This is communicating with the rest of the house, though, right, Charlie?
It's not communicating.
Okay, this one you did not communicate it. Okay.
Not communicating and not vented.
But no thermal barriers. I mean, I don't see insulation.
It's built
no
like into the hill, isn't it?
Yeah. It's insulated down like below grade. It's all like if I back up one, yeah, you can't see it there. Yeah, you can see insulation here. This wall here is the south.
Oh, so you insulated the perimeter, not the subfloor.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Charlie used fiberglass. Jeez.
I know. The only place I ever used fiberglass was in the wood foundations below grade. I
Yeah.
probably today I'd use foam.
Yeah.
I don't trust cellulose there. I don't know. Maybe it's all right. So this is that wall that gets the supporting wall in the foundation that we just saw. This
And just to clarify, you said you did have vents in that crawl space, but did you seal those vents up at a later point in time?
They did.
Okay.
I didn't. I scolded them, but yeah, they should be open because that you need to be able to change that air down there.
Well, it looks like from your pictures it's nice and dry, so
I know. It's like, how do you fix
hard
not
to scold
broken,
them.
right?
Yeah.
So there's that air intake right here. Just a small air intake. And then the idea is that the cooler air goes in the bottom and gets warmed up on that wall and comes out those holes at the top.
Oh. Oh, cool.
Here's the window wall. You can see those insulated shutters. And as far as I know, they use those shutters. I didn't see any sign that they didn't, but the window conditions look pretty good. If there was getting a lot of condensation on these windows, it would certainly make this wood look a lot worse than that after 30 years, I would think.
I always thought those interior storm windows have performed pretty well. I usually see those still doing pretty well.
I think that's the way all windows should be. This
Yeah.
is ludicrous. The whole notion of thermal pane windows is ludicrous. I just think
They fail so quickly here on the southern sides, you know, because of the solar.
Yeah.
they fail really
we have a huge
quick.
issue.
They fail really quick, and glass is not recyclable.
Yeah.
Window glass.
Would you be able to design a vinyl frame that does that? Because I mean, that's part of this. These are usually like clad exterior, wood interior, at least all wood windows, one or the other,
Yeah, these are metal clad exterior, wood interior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you could. I don't see
Yeah.
why you could.
Like a Pella?
These are all Pella, yeah. All the houses I built used these clad Pella, except one that used a plastic wood clad one.
We need
we'll get to that house in a minute.
We need somebody to lobby for non-sexy durable construction.
I know.
Well, yeah,
we have
that's
actually we've codified things that almost make it impossible to build houses this way.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, isn't it? I mean, and you're seeing all these, you really realize just like we rush headlong into all the most important stuff like drainage and site work and R value and air sealing, and then focus almost all of our attention on everything else. And it's like completely backwards of like and a lot of it is just like, are you building the house for like quarterly profits, or are you building the house to last for 200 years? I mean, that's the difference.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a bit about that whole the economic side of it and how what is green.
That's the whole disposable
green,
thing,
right? So this is a kitchen in that octagon house, and you can see where I like to make sure the boards all lined up
grain wise.
Yeah. So
beautiful.
There's some Lazy Susans. It's just that this is how all the boxes were built in place like that, and then basically clad with the finish wood, in this case, oak. I like to test them out.
That's awesome.
Here I am testing a pot rack.
That's great.
Well, when's the last time you've seen a plywood cabinet?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I used to buy like all these 3/4 inch birch veneer plywood. I used to buy it by the pallet, and average kitchen would take probably 30 sheets of plywood.
Yeah.
Mm.
But now we're up in the attic of that octagon house. Looks pretty good after 30 years.
It does.
Wow.
This is the one with the erroneous ventilation. I'm telling
Yeah.
you, people don't realize you can totally muck up ventilation. If you air seal,
Mm-hmm.
you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And an R60 cellulose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That ventilation just doesn't matter really. It's a
It
cool.
really doesn't
I've read
matter.
that that
Yeah.
it's like the ventilation's really just a backup parachute if other things go wrong, and you really see it in this building.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's so
And
frustrating when you
Oh,
see
you mean
like,
when? No, excuse me.
oh, I was just gonna say it's so frustrating when you have to fight like all of the roofers out there in the industry that just say the solution is adding more ventilation, and you
I
see
know,
houses with
I
all
know.
these extra vents put on them to fix problems.
It's a huge misconception that goes on in the industry, and it just keeps getting passed on and passed on.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
There isn't a day that goes by on the internet that I don't fight somebody about
Yeah.
ventilation.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to start posting more pictures of moldy outdoor carports with full air moving around them.
Yeah.
Just showing you that that's not the reason.
Yeah.
So this
Hey,
house is
hey, guys.
1985 now. Notice where the garage is, because they did a big remodel on this house at some point in the last 30 years. It has a breezeway here that separates the garage from the house. So there was a door in here, and I think they end up putting a door here. This is the house, the way it looks today. I think that's a door. And you can see they closed in the garage. It's kind of fun going back and see how they've changed things. But that's the addition they put on the original house. I don't think the skylights were there in the original house either. No,
And they added a ridge vent, didn't they?
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm not a big fan of skylights. At any rate, so that's that. This is the framing in that house. Again, we're back to the truss type studs.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've noticed, but almost every one of these pictures has pipe clamps. Anybody is I don't know how people can build without pipe clamps. But
That's the cabinet maker in you, Charlie.
See, there's a
It's
couple,
like
a couple
the whole
more
thing's just
there.
a big cabinet that you're building.
It is, yeah, exactly.
That's great. I love it.
So you can see that the headers, again, they're hollow. All the header supports are 1x instead of 2x. The sill supports are 1x. So again, it's an attempt to reduce the amount of solid lumber that's through the wall, because the average 2x4 house can be 24% of the wall could be R4.
Yeah.
And would you insulate those headers then?
Oh yeah, they're all blown full of cellulose.
That's cool.
So here's some plans. I wanted to give you a taste of the plans that I did for these houses. I really like to do all the detail as much as possible, because when you draw plans for a house, you actually build it in your head, and you minimize the with plumbing, for example, ending up in the middle of a joist or whatever. You can plan all that ahead. There's no reason for ever any plumber having to drill through a floor joist or compromise a floor joist. So if you pay attention, so you can see the inside and outside corners. So it's all hollow for blown in insulation. And then wherever you have a partition, again, it doesn't go all the way through to the outside.
Charlie, that's a passive house standard that you're building for a fraction of the cost.
I know.
Our 40 wall.
Passive house is super expensive, right?
Yeah. How much did that house cost to build? Do you remember the octagon one?
I think 50,000. I think.
And it was
interesting to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do the inflation for us, Tessa.
Yeah. I will.
Yeah.
Google
nice.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a custom kitchen built on site, and
And how many square feet was it?
That was I think that one was 1,500. Not a big house, but
Charlie.
Yeah, Christopher.
My daughter's got practice, so I'm going to be getting off of here. But before I left, man, thank you, because this was amazing information. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's nice to have you on here, Christopher. Good to see you, man.
Thanks.
So this is,
really quick. It's about 142,000 today.
Wow. Nice math. Great.
Thank you,
That's
Google.
Still considerably less than what
142,000? Is that what it was?
Yeah, you said it's built in 1985, right,
Yeah.
Charlie? Yeah.
That was
I think it'd be more
83.
expensive out here. I think our cost, materials costs out here are more expensive than a lot of the country.
It's really hard to talk about numbers. I mean, all you can do is pencil each one out at each time for each location and see how it plays out. So here's the insulated headers. You take a regular 2x8 and rip an inch off of it, and then put plywood on both sides, and then you blow the space with cellulose.
Donnie, I totally agree with costs, but I mean, I just did the math and it's under $100 a square foot.
Yeah.
I mean, and today on where I live, like, anything that's like custom and super energy efficient is, you're pushing $1,000 a square foot.
I know. I mean, basically, and now just a regular, row house around here is almost 200 a square foot.
Well, you gotta remember that these houses have no heating systems, no cooling systems.
Right.
You just don't need them when you get build this way. You're in the summer, you're in contact with 50 degrees. It's moderating your indoors, and in the winter, you're in contact with that same 50 degrees, moderating the indoor.
So even if you double the cost with just all the labor and materials, you're still at like townhome-like construction,
Yeah.
Amazing.
So if a header was more than 5 feet, like you had a 6-foot or 8-foot sliding glass door, you had to do a header, it would get a zigzag like this built inside the header. And you'd blow each of these triangles then with cellulose. It's a little bit more complicated, but still resulting in an insulated header.
Amazing.
This is just a drawing of a frost wall, or a wall that comes out at grade and shows the insulation. All this is buried below grade, topsoil, slab on the interior, drainage. Again, a basement wall, insulated. Yeah, all pretty straightforward. Just another drawing of the truss stud wall with this case it's a sloped ceiling sitting on that wall, and you can see the I got another picture of it. The weakest point in this is this big honking 2x8 up here.
Mhm.
But I have a way of dealing with that I would do today. We'll see some pictures of that, I hope. There's just a floor plan of that house where he added a garage. That's the basement plan. And this is more views of that house. There's that perimeter drain going to daylight. Look at the building permit on there. This would have been 1986, and this was just a remodel. I did a lot of remodels over the years, and this was a second story addition to this house, and I'll overlay. That's what we were after, and that's a finished picture of it there. This guy was a little unusual, to say the least, and we built a python terrarium for him in there in his living room. And this is all back to my ferro cement days. I built all this out of chicken wire and concrete, and a little swimming pool down here for the snakes.
That reminds me of a house I did that they had an aviary right in the middle of the house, and
Yeah.
I walk in the front door, and there's this hedgehog right off this, like it was like a little zoo inside this house, and parrots flying around inside the house. And it was
love it.
So
but they actually had an atrium for the birds. You know, kind of, it wasn't really an atrium, but it looked like one. You know.
So this is the last house I built in upstate New York before I moved out here. And this gets us into layout. You know, they've scraped the soil and now we've laid it out. They're going to dig for the foundation. This is 1987. You see the orientation, that's magnetic north. And we want to orient it 10 degrees east of magnetic north. And the reason is that in upstate New York, the mornings are often foggy and cloudy. See how it is here? Look at the fog in the trees. So this compensates for that and favors the afternoon exposure more than the morning exposure. Probably inconsequential, but it was, when you're playing these games, you play them to the hilt, right?
Wow.
And of
You
course,
put so much thought into these houses that you built.
Yeah.
Charlie.
Super cool.
I even felt bad for this guy that we dug up.
Yeah.
So all the
now
houses,
he's sitting on some street corner begging.
yeah, all the houses started as like this. The client would kind of tell me what they were after. I'd come up with just a one-page drawing like this. It showed the different elevations and the floor plans of the different stories. And we would work through these drawings until it was what they wanted. And then I would do the full-scale plans and get them approved and all of that. So do any engineering that needed to be done. The airlock entries, the primary entry to all these houses had what's called an airlock entry, mudroom, if you want to call it that, in order to reduce the impact of just opening the interior to the outdoors. So that's that. This house had this giant beam we had to build. That's a steel flitch plate. It's 32 feet long, 30 inches tall, and it had 4 microlams bolted, 2 on each side, all bolted together to create this beam to support the shed roof of the house. And we'll see some of that. But again, you see the truss studs there and the insulated headers. We're using the insulated headers here to support this thing. And there it is in place.
I love the clear story windows, but they're just such a pain to frame.
Yeah, maintain as well. I'd
Mhm.
probably, in my new thinking about houses, it's all about reducing volume. So clear story windows like this, while interesting and fun, maybe, I'm not sure that they're the best approach in terms of a super insulated house.
Mhm.
Here's the double. I did this roof a little different. This one has shingles on top of this, and the airspace is built on the underside of the roof. So I could use a cheaper insulation board, this Solitex board, to create the airspace above the insulation. This was 21-inch truss joists, and they had ended up with 18 inches of cellulose in these. And then, of course, it would cover the rest of it. So that vaulted roof came up on top of that microlam fitch plate beam. And that vented space continued up the face of the clear story wall and then vented out the upper roof. So that's airflow like that. You see how thick the walls are, yes?
Mm-hmm.
There's
So
building one.
Charlie, with this design you had back there, since you would have that exposure on the exterior, would that would create a warming zone sort of? Would you get better airflow, you think? Would it be pulling?
Well, yeah, in fact, you're gonna, I think I've got the pictures in here where we'll see where the insulation settled in the top up here. And this all shows up warmer because when the sun hits that, it heats
You're
that
right.
space up and
Yeah.
actually transmits through even 10 inches of cellulose.
Wow.
So that's kind of interesting. But there's building one of the
It's gorgeous.
studs. We have this was a form that could build.
A little jig for it. Yeah.
I could build 16 footers or 8 footers, either one.
Yeah.
And there's some of the 16-footer ones making pretty designs on the ground.
Yeah, cool shot.
More truss studs and insulated headers. So this is the house. You can see that big fitch plate beam is right under these clear story windows. This roof, that's the big truss joists that run up to there, and the venting goes up and into this and out the upper ridge.
It sure is a pretty house with the clear story windows, though, Charlie.
Yeah, I know.
I like them.
30 years after construction, this house tested at less than 1 ACH 50.
Woo.
And not just once, twice. Because the guy didn't believe his blower door tester and he went home and got another one.
Oh, that's awesome.
But all
What type
these,
what type of ventilation did you install in these houses, Charles?
you mean roof venting?
Well, no, like ventilation for the house. Did you ever put in a air to air exchanger, or
Yeah,
did you use
these all
bath
had,
fans?
they had HRVs.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what this is right here. It's going to show up in the next picture, I think. But all these windows failed, and so she had a blower door, had an energy audit done, hopefully to get help with paying for new windows, and she couldn't get any help. I mean, house at 1 ACH 50, you're just not going to get any help to improve the energy efficiency of, because everybody knows that windows are never going to pay for themselves.
Mm-hmm. But there's the joke of the guy that got the new windows, and then they sent him the bill, and he called.
What's the
and-
R value change on it?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, he called that they sent him the bill, and he's like, "Why are you sending me this bill? You said the windows were going to pay for themselves."
Yeah, I know. It's a great joke. So that's the HRV intake and exhaust next to each other there.
Sorry, I skipped ahead.
Yeah, that's all right. It's that same house. I built the whole house minus the deck, and this was 87. I built this house for 70,000.
Wow.
87.
How many square feet was that?
This was 3,200, I think.
Jeez, Charlie.
Wasn't a good businessman,
That's
right?
good. Did you make any money at all?
Well, you know, I made a living. I never made a profit ever on any house I ever built. And I have this thing of I don't believe in profit. Why don't you just make a decent wage and make what's up with profit? I don't get it. I'm un-American that way. We'll get back to the politics here.
That's $190,000 today.
Yeah.
For
A
190.
house at 1 ACH 50.
Yeah.
I mean, this was I built this back in the day when I had no clue what I was doing. So you know, I got lucky a lot. I refused to use materials that weren't sort of natural materials.
It's $60 a square foot.
Yeah.
That's crazy, Charlie.
But here's that south wall where that venting is. And so in the south side of the home, before the sun hits it, you can see where there's some settlement here. Notice the header's fine. But after the sun hit it, you can see that warming that space, bit of settlement. And it's either settlement or I just never got it enough in there. I don't know. But
Charlie, I'm afraid I gotta go jet and do family stuff.
all right. Well,
It's been such a pleasure seeing everybody.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to keep going a little bit if you guys want. I don't have anything else going here, but I was going to talk a little bit about a consult I did on a wood foundation. Mark Parley was involved with this foundation issue, and it's kind of a fun conversation to talk about how you can muck things up. Like we take that venting out of the one I built. This one, they took the whole heating system. They stopped conditioning the crawl space, and they started having a huge moisture issue down there. Duh.
So are you guys recording this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good question. I was just gonna ask that just for sake of time. It's if you're on East Coast, it's 10 o'clock. Midwest, it's 9. I got a jet too, Charlie,
Yeah,
but
me too.
this was great. And we did have someone ask if there could be a part 2. So
Yeah, maybe we should let's do a part 2 and then we'll save the 2 recordings.
And also, I put a couple links on Trombe walls, so if people want to grab those and just read up on them, and so they be familiar with them.
But there's so much more conversation to have. It's really so cool, Charlie. And I do think that one of the things that occurred to me if we get to part 2 is how all the people that seem to be wanting to build this new version of housing, if we agree that they're too expensive and too inefficient, seems to be trying to eliminate labor. It's all like 3D printing and all this stuff. And yours is actually like simple design and actually training people to have skills that like people could build these, and I wonder about the wisdom of like 3D printing versus actually like giving people carpentry skills and like building houses.
And there's building science concerns with 3D printing in a lot of climate zones.
Totally.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I can't imagine.
And all of those, do you hear them? They don't talk about thermal envelopes. They're not talking about all the drainage prep they're doing. I mean, there's all these like bones things that they're completely omitting with these sort of new solutions. So really great conversations we could have.
Well, and it doesn't have to be, one versus another too. You can use principles across it, and hopefully they would,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not against innovation. It's this, is it thought through and from all angles and stuff like that? And plus, people need to work too.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
can let me zip through this stuff here because
Yep.
there's a list of things we can look at and talk about in terms of what I've learned. This is just maybe a foreshadowing of what we can get into with another session.
Yeah, we should pick this up again. I do
Yeah,
need to scoot myself, but I mean, you guys go on. Have a good one, y'all.
I got a jet, but Charlie, write down where we stopped off, and then we'll do part
Yeah.
2.
Yeah, well, it's right at that Wood Foundation consult, so that's
Okay.
pretty easy to
Cool.
remember.
Bye,
Hey.
everybody. Have a good one.
Okay.
Great seeing everybody.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you for
Yeah, you're
sharing all of
amazing,
your
Charlie.
wisdom. We'll see you at
Thanks
part
a lot.
2.
See you
Thanks a lot,
guys.
Tessa.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Charlie. Charlie, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Mark.
Yeah, I just put in a link to my article on repairing a rotting roof. And remember, that was an earth berm home, which was a wood foundation with the wood wall or the wood floor in it. And it gave a lot of reasoning why we had moisture problems in that thing. So I just put a link there for people to get it and they can read it and we can discuss that as well.
Sure. Yeah, this has been kind of fun.
Yeah.
I didn't really know quite where it would go, but it seemed, I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah. We need to do something on condensation as well, on condensation,
Yeah.
And I can tell you about some of the new problems with condensation that we're seeing, the new underlayment that they're using for roof underlayment.
Yeah.
It's condensing on that surface of that underlayment. And then also on the plastic on the ridge vents, major point of condensation.
Interesting. Where's all that? Why is all that moisture getting in there?
Well, you vent a roof to get the moisture out. And
yeah, my theory is though that you should never have moisture in a roof space.
Well, you shouldn't. You shouldn't really, but nobody's air sealing their walls, so it's late. It's coming from the inside, and there's a 1 to 150 vent ratio and a 1 to 300 vent ratio in the code, and Joe Stiebrick, when I was just out there for summer camp, he was talking about going to quite a bit less ventilation in an attic. He's discovering.
Yeah, well, I think when you start talking about night sky radiation, you gotta get less. And I think there's no harm in going towards 60-40 or 60-70-30, whereas if you get more higher venting, then you're gonna have issues.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to pull from the inside. I was just at one that had the intake ventilation, 60-40 is what they allow max right now, and 60 being intake and 40 being exhaust. I was just in one that had, it was like 90-10, 90% exhaust and 10% intake.
Oh God.
Yeah. It's
like
a brand
nothing like siphoning all your indoors out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's why I was talking about that house, the Octagon house, where I had 85-15, only 15 up high and had no issues. And are you going to fix that?
Yeah. I think everybody's gone except for you and me.
I think so. The kind of 2 hours just went by like crazy.
Oh, it does. I'm doing 8 hours on Saturday for Ashy here out in Cedar Rapids. I got to get that ready.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm under the gun on all kinds of reports. I've taken on 5 new cases and fighting a bunch of old ones, I
got to figure out how to stop the video on this.